Let's have a look at the grid sequencer. Let's start with a new song. We go to the app menu and select New Song. And we'll load a few instruments from the example instruments included with Oscalate. If we tap the instrument name, we get to the instrument summary. And we'll tap Load to go into the instrument browser. Now, let's load a few different instruments. Let's try a hi-hat. Let's try a deep bass. We'll see how that sounds. Let's try a hand clap. A kick drum. And a snare drum. Maybe this snare drum. We'll close the instrument browser, and we have all of our instruments. We close the instrument summary, and we switch to the sequencer by tapping the CPU load button up in the top left corner. And we can go back to the synthesizer, by pressing the CPU load button again. Let's go to the sequencer. Now, the grid sequencer is comprised of a sequence of 16 step blocks played vertically. Each block is comprised of a set of track patterns, one for each instrument, and displayed on the note grid in a different color. As the cursor passes each row, the notes on that row are played, much like a piano roll. The grid sequencer is also inspired by the tracker sequencers of the 1980s. If you tap a square on the note grid, the note is played using the current instrument. Let me turn on edit mode by pressing E to enter some notes. We can also enter note off events by pressing the note type button beside the edit button. Note on events are represented by a full square, and note off events are represented by a horizontal line. A note on event plays a note for the duration of the envelope or until a note off event occurs. We enter a note by tapping on a square, and remove the note by tapping on it again. We'll change back to note on from note off. If we tap the instrument button, we see the instrument list. And we can select an instrument to change to that track, can mute or unmute them as well. Let's enter some notes. Here's the kick drum. We set it to every 4 beats. A very simple beat. Add the snare on the off beats. We put a clap on the off beats as well. We put them up here so they'll be more visible. We put a hi-hat here. Let's see what the bass sounds like. Very deep. We'll put it at the bottom and see how that goes. Octaves are marked with a slightly highlighted line to show where the octaves are. That's the root of the scale. We can listen to the pattern by pressing loop, which will play only this block, repeatedly. If we press play, the sequence will advance to the next block and play all the blocks in order. Let's loop this block. We can change the notes while the sequencer is playing. Let's cut off the notes of the bass, just have them short. The tempo is a little slow. We'll set the snap selector to 10 in the synthesizer and increase the song tempo a little bit. To 120. Let's go back to our instruments. Not bad. Nice beat going. If we press the block list button, we can see the list of blocks in the sequence. There's also a previous and the next button below the block list to allow us to scroll through the instrument tracks faster. We can scroll through each instrument to see what there is. Blocks can also be added and deleted or moved to another position using the bottom right menu. Let's add a few more blocks. Below the block list button and the instruments list button are cut, copy, and paste buttons, and the edit buffer. An instrument track button can be copied and pasted to another instrument track. Let's copy a block and paste it into another block. Paste it into the third, and paste it into the fourth. Let's modify the patterns a little. Let's change the hi-hat rhythm a little bit. We'll switch to note on. A little bit of variety. Let's see. We'll leave the bass for the moment. Let's try changing the clap a little bit. Let's take a look at some variations. Leave the bass. And the snare. Let's go back down here and add a little bit of variation in the middle here. We'll add some more variations as well. Let's see what this sounds like. Press play to play the entire sequence. Not bad, kind of interesting. Let's unmute the bass and see what it sounds like. It's not a particularly suitable bass sound here, so let's switch the bass. We'll go back to the synthesizer and into the instrument browser. Let's load a different bass in. Let's see if there's another bass. Let's try that. We replace the bass, and close. Let's go back and see what that sounds like. It's a little too low. We can use the directional pad at the bottom left corner and we can move the bass track up. And we move it up. One square at a time. That's a bit more interesting. Now we can copy this instrument pattern and paste it into the other blocks. Let's switch to each block. And we paste in. Now let's see. Let's add a little bit more variation. Let's move the bass up a little bit each time. We have a little bit of movement. And come back. Let's see what this sounds like. Let's change that. Let's go down to there. Shifted notes are wrapped around to the other side of the grid at the edges. We created a short beat. It's a good start.